Are you okay?
I nailed one of them downstairs with a bow and arrow.
All right, Sambo. We trashed the one that looks like Twisted Sister. Totally annihilated his night-stalking ass. Well, that nuke helped a little. Death to all vampires! Maximum body count! We're awesome monster bashers!
Michael and Sam have just moved to Santa Carla, California. They're about to discover its secret.
Notice anything unusual about Santa Carla yet?
No. It's a pretty cool place. If you're a Martian.
Or a vampire.
When you scream. So where are you? The flying nun?
I'm your brother, Sammy. Help me!
Stay back! Stay back!
What's happening to me, Star? Get yourself a good sharp steak. Drive it right through his heart.
You're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a damn blood-sucking vampire. Oh, you wait till Mom finds out, buddy.
When a vampire buys it, it's never a pretty sight.
Michael, they're coming! Oh, shit!
Welcome to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Couch Potato Theater celebrates all of our favorite movies, including those hidden gems, cult classics, guilty pleasures, box office blockbusters, and, of course, failures. You may own a copy of these movies, but when it comes on television, you love what you're watching so much, you don't get off that couch. And that is the definition of what this show is all about. I'm Kevin, your host for this special Couch Potato Theater, and we are proud to celebrate The Lost Boys, that 1987 classic. And I'd like to introduce my co-host here for Couch Potato Theater. First and always, of course, is my co-founder, my brother from another mother, Mr. Kyle Wagner. How are your vampire hunting skills now?
The only problem with being in Couch Potato Theater, all the damn vampires.
I know the problem, yes. But we have some other vampire hunters out there. Or are they vampires in disguise? I don't know. Let's start off with Jennifer. Jennifer, welcome back. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing good. Vampire or vampire hunter? You going to tell us? You let us know?
Maybe a groupie.
Okay, gotcha. And back with us here on Couch Potato Theater is my lovely fiance, Erin Gill from Down Under. How are you, darling?
I'm good. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Are you vampire or vampire hunter? Or vampire group?
Totally a vampire. We're in second week of 6-week lockdown and it's the middle of friggin' winter.
Have you turned on family members already?
Close. Even the dog. Yes. So, no, totally a vampire at this moment. I'm feeling like I'm sleeping all day and not so partying at night, but that's okay.
Thank you all for joining us. But before we move on, Kyle, why don't you let our wonderful Couch Potato listeners know how they can get a hold of us?
Well, you can get a hold of us here at the Fandom Podcast Network, starting at our master feed homepage, fpnet.podbean.com. Of course, you can also use the Podbean app, search for the Fandom Podcast Network. You can also search for the Fandom Podcast Network on the following podcast catchers: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Tuned In. Of course, you can visit our Facebook page, too. Just search for the Fandom Podcast Network. If you want to tell us how you might hunt vampires or how we can improve our vampire hunting skills, you can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Of course, you can find me, Kyle Frog, on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you hunting vampires?
You can find me, Kevin Frog, on Instagram and Twitter at Spartan_Phoenix. Dash frog. Just kidding.
And Erin the Bloodsucker, where can we people find you?
On Instagram under Audrey Worm.
And where do vampire groupies hang out these days, Jennifer?
On Instagram at ChefStomp91.
And of course, there are a couple ways you can support the Fandom Podcast Network as well. Of course, we love reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. We love those reviews in general, but we love those 5 stars as well. You know, any input helps us make better podcasts to feed your ears. Of course, too, you know, we expand around here, Kevin. And
we do.
We are now on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel.
Woohoo! So we want subscribers, man. We want subscribers.
Absolutely.
Best show of the week.
Well, you know, that's speaking of the blind, but hey. But no, yes, search for the Fandom Podcast Network channel on YouTube. Give us a subscription. We just launched. We've got Culture Clash Live there. We stream all of our podcasts there as well. And we are working on some exclusive YouTube content for the Fandom Podcast Network as well. With that, Kevin, does Grandpa have everything we need for this podcast?
He doesn't have a TV, but he's got a TV guide.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
There you go.
Don't rip the corner. Don't rip the corner.
don't rip the corner. That's right. And that was a Bible around here at the house, man. We had to get that TV guide, and it was cool. All those classic covers, man. I miss that. Jeez.
I did the crosswords all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're talking about the 1987 classic, The Lost Boys. I get a little bit of plot description here. Financial troubles force a recent divorcee and her teenage sons, Mike and Sam, to settle down with her father in the California town of Santa Carla. The town is plagued by bikers and some mysterious deaths. At first, Sam laughs off the rumors he hears about vampires who inhabit the small town, until he makes friends with 2 other boys who claim to be vampire hunters. But after Mike sees a beautiful girl at a local amusement park, he begins to exhibit the classic signs of vampirism, sleeping days and staying out all night, and is drawn into the gang of bikers by the beautiful girl. The younger boy starts getting into trouble because of his friend's obsession. Fearing for his own safety, Sam recruits the 2 younger vampire hunters to save his brother by finding and destroying the head vampire. Now, before we I'm going to switch things up a little bit here. I want to actually get right into where you guys first saw this. Was it in the theater? Was it on videotape? How did you first hear about it? Jennifer, I'm going to go to you first.
In the theater. Laura and I went and saw it because it had Kiefer Sutherland, and he was, what's my favorite word? Adorable. So.
What about you, Kyle?
This was actually a home video release for me. When this hit the theaters, I was only 10, and my sister refused to help me sneak into it. So, you know.
Gotcha. That's good. I like that. Erin, what about you? Where did you first see The Lost Boys?
Oh, cinema. Definitely cinema. Yes. That and Kiefer Sutherland. It was definitely, I think that was the start of the love affair. That and Stand By Me.
Gotcha. I don't have any memory seeing this in the theater. I may have, but I know I got it as soon as it came out on video. I want to say that maybe it might have passed me by in the theater or something. And I think that friends of mine recommended it, and eventually I saw it later when it came out on VHS. So that's the feeling that I got. But I want to talk about the theatrical posters here. Of course, we have a few to choose from here. We've got the iconic one, which is on the video cassettes and Blu-rays. Of course, we've got Jason Patrick with his glasses front and off to the left a little bit, and then we have the beautiful, or excuse me, as Jennifer would say, adorable Kiefer Sutherland, with Jamie Gertz putting her head on his shoulder, and then the rest of the motley crew behind them. And then we have as Erin would say, the UK release version here, where we get Kiefer front and center with Michael off to the right and Star off to the left there, of course. And then we have this Lost Boys. I found this. I think it's a reissue, probably a more recent picture. Maybe it's a fan art that's done of the Lost Boys, and it's got Kiefer at the top as he's all vamped out with the rest of the crew wrapped around him. And I had to share that because I thought it was very cool. Erin, I want to go over to you first because you obviously remember seeing that UK version with Kiefer front and center.
Yes, yeah. I actually had the poster, and it was probably been original back then, and it would be worth loads now, but don't have it. I think I probably laminated it so to keep it so I could drag it everywhere. So yeah, I had the original standard red US poster, but when I went to the UK, and it was around about that time, I remember seeing the UK did a lot of what they call quad posters, where they were like a widescreen poster instead of being the portrait size in the sense of look. And I don't know, I love them both because they're both different.
Yeah.
They've got a different feel. There's a lot of times where Corey Haim's taken out of that other picture. There are ones where Corey Haim seems to get stuck in and then taken out. I have seen different versions.
Both the Coreys aren't in the regular one here. Or actually, no, Haim is out. It's Feldman that's out of it. So yeah, he's one of the Frog Brothers.
Yeah, no, but then sometimes I've seen it where Corey Haim's face isn't there.
Interesting.
Like I've seen him move it around. Yes.
Okay. What about you, Jennifer? What's your thought on these posters? What's the most iconic one to you?
The red with Jason Patrick and Kiefer Sutherland, the one right behind your shoulder.
Yeah, the basic one that's on all the video releases.
Yeah.
Very cool. What about you, Kyle? Thoughts on the posters?
I got to go with The Lost Boys, the one that was the cover for the DVD and the VHS. I mean, I think that's the most iconic poster. I had actually not really seen either of these images until you posted these up. So
yeah. Well, we had some movie taglines here. Sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die. It's fun to be a vampire. Being wild is in their blood. A little bit of background here. March 5th, 1985, Variety news item announced that the independent production distribution company, Producers Sale Organization, bought the first-time screenwriters Janice Fisher and James Jeremiah's Lost Boys script for $400,000 in '86. And started getting this rolling here. And, of course, it made reference to the Peter Pan stories. And originally it was supposed to be directed by Richard Donner. And it was going to be kind of a Goonies style of a vampire film. And Richard Donner committed to doing Lethal Weapon. And so he said he's going to produce. And, of course, that's where Joel Schumacher came in. And we'll touch on this a little bit later. But Joel Schumacher he liked the story, but he wanted to turn it into a teenage vampire as opposed to these kind of like a Boy Scouts Goonies type thing. And that was kind of where he wanted to go with it. He wanted to throw a little kind of sexy vibe in there as well. And the rest is history. So in the beginning of the film, we see the family moving to Santa Carla. And there's an iconic scene where I think it's Corey Haim, or is it Jason Patrick's character? They're looking at the Santa Carla billboard sign. And as they pass it, behind it, it says the murder capital of the world. Well, what's really interesting is most of this film, other than the sound stages in LA and Warner Brothers, was filmed on location in around Santa Cruz. We're going to talk more about Santa Cruz a little bit later, but Santa Cruz was also known as the murder capital for a while. Santa Cruz Chamber of Commerce was not keen on reliving the murder capital moniker, which had been hung on Santa Cruz during a serial killer's rampage in the 1970s. Santa Cruz and Santa Carla, take place, was once plagued with the reputation of being the murder capital of the world because a series of brutal murders by 3 different, very disturbed men in the early 70s. Because of John Linley Fraser, Herbert Mullen, and Edmund Kemper, Santa Cruz endured 28 murders over a 30-month period between 1970 and 1973. Erin, did you remember hearing about this before? Or did you learn about this more recently?
Oh, no, I've known that forever.
Of course you did.
That was no, that they didn't want to use the Santa Cruz name has always been known. There's nothing, oh God, I can't think, probably 20 odd years. But I also, Ed Kemper, for those who are out there, might sound familiar, he was featured in Mindhunter.
Yes.
The series on Netflix, and
so creepy. Well done.
So creepy. And his mother worked at the Santa Cruz, I think, college, and that's where he got to pick up co-eds. So it's always been known the why they changed.
Did
the
you know
name.
about this, Jennifer?
Yeah. Serial killers are one of my favorite things. And Kemper is actually one of the first serial killers that were interviewed by the guys at the FBI that created the BAU, because he likes to talk.
Which was showcased in Mindhunter, yeah.
Yes, and he's big. Kemper is 6'9". He's highly intelligent. He was killing the co-eds that he killed were replacements for his mother, and when he finally killed his mother, that was it. He was done. And then Mullen thought that his serial killing would prevent earthquakes from happening. So he was a mission-based serial killer. And the Frazier was actually a spree killer. He killed 5 in one night.
Wow.
But the interesting thing that they didn't mention is there was actually a third serial killer. So you have 1 spree and 2 serial mentioned, but there was a third serial killer in Santa Cruz between 1979 and 1981 named David Carpenter. And he actually added 10 to the body count. So for such a small area, you look at Los Angeles and they have the Night Stalker and the Hillside Stranglers, but that's a huge, huge city. Yeah. For such a small city to have 3 serial killers and 1 spree killer in that span, who were responsible for the deaths of 38 people, it is the murder capital.
Yeah, Kyle, I think that someone who's doing location shooting probably put 2 and 2 together saying, let's do this.
Yeah, with a very dark sense of humor.
Definitely. Okay, so guys, here's a funny little thing. Without cheating, raise your hand if you know the answer to this. So one of the funny things about this movie is how many times Michael's name is said in the film. And there is a funny video where someone put a compilation of all these in there. And can anyone raise their hand and tell me how many times without cheating? Jennifer?
Approximately 118.
Let's see what they say here. They said how many? 114 times. So that's close. I'm going to give that to you. Yes.
Kevin, I was just going to interject. I always play the Michael drinking game, so I'm always passed out about 20 minutes into the film.
When I was watching this the other night, I actually paid attention to every time they said it, and they're like, man, they're really driving home his name there. It's like, wow. I almost kind of wish his name was Kevin. That would have been more entertaining. Jennifer's shaking her head right now. It's making me feel weird.
Ego.
Okay, so one thing I want to mention here is a cultural influence here. Asborn Jean wrote that The Lost Boys help shift popular culture depictions of vampires. The film is often credited with bringing a more youthful appeal to the vampire genre by making the vampires themselves sexy and young. They inspired films like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The scene in which David transforms noodles into worms was directly referenced in the 2014 vampire mockumentary What We Do in the Shadows. And there's been a few songs inspired from bands regarding thing as well. Erin, I want to go over to you with this first. I seem to remember vampire theme stuff really taken off after this film. I remember even dressing up like one of them, and and then you had the vampire role-playing game in the 90s. I think there's a lot of evidence to this.
Yes. Now, there was definitely, I think, making them this sort of rock star, bikey, vampire, cool thing for kids really brought back the vampire sort of. It was a different take of the vampire lore. I mean, there were 3 quite big vampire movies during the 80s. Fright Night, which again was a comedy, and then you had Near Dark, which I think maybe me and another person saw and no one else. But, but definitely with making them such the iconic sort of rock stars, it then brought that out to everyone wanting to be a vampire. This was a cool thing to be, to become.
Made it cool, made it sexy,
The tagline was excellent. It's fun to be a vampire, sleep all day, party all night. I mean, who never wants to be that? Die young, be beautiful.
Feel the same, Jennifer? You think this movie did it?
I think I brought it to the forefront because the Interview with the Vampire didn't come out until about 5 years later, even though Anne Rice's book came out in 76. And Lestat was a rock star, and that was how he managed to be out at night, not during the day. But I think to bring it, out of the Bram Stoker and the Nosferatus, the Bela Lugosi's, all that old school, the different stages of vampirism, and into a new, fresh retelling. I think it was kind of the awakening for Gen X.
Yeah, you would you agree with that, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, too, we had Near Dark in '87 as well. So I think you had two interesting contrasts in vampire films here. But yeah, I think this movie especially was a movie that helped bring the vampire back into pop culture. A lot of people had that classic vampire look, but this just kind of modernized it, gave it a new look, and obviously when you have Jason Patric and Kiefer Sutherland in this, it gets more attention because of who was in this as well. So
right, yeah. It's definitely started a trend here, and in the special features of the DVD, you hear Joel Schumacher talking about it, and a lot of the co-stars, how this really kind of made vampires fun to play, fun to portray, fun to see in the movie theater and stuff like that. So definitely made them, sexier. So let's talk about some of our favorite scenes. Kyle, right back at you. What are some of your favorite scenes here in Lost Boys?
You know what? Everything that happens when the first time they take Michael down into the old hotel, it's such an intense scene because you're not quite sure how this is going to play out. And I always thought that was very good. And you know what? I'm also a big fan of the battle in the finale. I think it was very well done. And I had just watched this before we started, and I forget how quickly paced that is. It happens in a short period of time, so it just keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. And I think it's very well done. This movie moves a lot faster than I remembered it initially the first time I've seen it, and I hadn't watched it it's been a little bit since I watched it, and it's at such a brisk pace, and that works so well for it. But I think those two scenes are the two scenes that really stand out for me.
What about you, Jennifer? What are some of your favorite scenes?
Anything with Kiefer Sutherland in it. And the dogs lived.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's where, Kiefer
and the dogs are crucial in the film too.
They were crucial. They're the protectors. They're the familiars. No, I think, when they're kind of that era of mystery, when they first introduced the vampires, they're on the merry-go-round, and then Jason Patric's character, Michael, sees them. And it's kind of like, what's their story? You're kind of intrigued. I think that introduction is very smart. There's not really any dialogue with them. They're just kind of doing their thing, being, little hoodlums on a Friday night. And I think that lends itself to kind of piquing your interest.
Right. What about you, Erin? Was there some scenes that stood out for you that are memorable? You just watched this last night, so jogged your memory, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it for a while, and I have to say that I went through a time where as soon as Kiefer became the vampire and it all got like that had the bit at the end, it went off the boil for me. But watching it again, I haven't watched it in years. I think I've seen bits of here on TV and that. I agree with Kyle. It actually goes very quickly, and it's amazing how quick it actually does. There's no sort of breath. There's no real time when you're bored. But it's saying that I'm with Jennifer on anytime Kiefer's on. I mean, just the magnetism he had. And he doesn't say a lot. He says a lot more than the rest of them, but really he probably had like a page of dialogue.
They actually talk about that in the special features because he gets and Kiefer was saying how he doesn't say a lot, but he got some of the best lines right at the end, and the camera just draws right to him.
Well, I mean, just having the close up of his face when he's like about to, drink the wine / blood.
Yeah.
And, it's just everything, just the little looks of when they're walking into the video store and then they sort of walk out, and he just looks over his shoulder, or when Star goes onto the bike, sits on the bike at the back of him when they're about to ride off, and he looks to Michael, and he's just got this sort of, he's always got a little bit of a sort of a twinkle in his eye, like this sort of bit of laughter. He gets the joke.
Yeah.
And he's amazing, he really is. He can, he pulled off a bleached mullet. I mean,
Especially when he takes the punch by Michael and you're like, what's going to happen? And he just rolled right with it and just, that was a good one. A few of my favorite scenes. I love the opening People Are Strange montage where it just shows all the different people of Santa Cruz or Santa Clara. And there was a band poster, a flyer that actually was a band called Strange. I noticed that for the first time, but it reminded me when I first went up to Santa Cruz and, went down the college area and all over there. And it was just like that. It was so weird. I love the scene, of course, when Michael meets Star and we got the sexy shirtless sax dude, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Great scene. I love it when the Coreys meet the Frog Brothers. Because, the Frog Brothers are just like, wait, who's this guy? Why is he dressed the way he is? And it almost feels like the Frog Brothers just want to talk about killing vampires with someone who's new, and it feels like they're trying to bring him into their cause right away. I like the surf Nazi bonfire scene right before they killed him. I think that's kind of cool where they show them how they're hunters, The vampire cave scene, of course, where Alex, who plays Marco, gets it with all that blood that just comes down. It's pretty good. But there's one scene, too, that I just found very funny that I completely forgot about, and is when the Frog Brothers and Corey's character, they go into the church real quick, and they fill up the holy water. And they're all the church people are going what are you doing? And then as they're leaving, Corey Haim's character just kind of goes, thanks, bye. And of course, the house end invasion battle is also very cool with the twist and stuff. But let's get into some of your favorite quotes from the film. And Jennifer, I'm going to go back to you. What are some of your favorites?
I think and it's not so much as a quote as it is throughout the Michael. I mean, it's just, you say it was 114, 118 times, however many it was. It is just such a memorable, they keep repeating it. And you can't get away from it. And I think that was a very effective choice. Not only to kind of bridge that gap and kind of get him more familiar with the Lost Boys, but also as a way to kind of almost hypnotically get him into the fold. Right. I think it was a very effective vehicle in doing that.
What about you, Kyle? Some of your favorite lines?
See, death by stereo. Come on now.
Death by stereo. Corey Haim, yeah. Sam says that.
I think one of the things with this movie is the dialogue is this kind of was a little bit of an early Buffy dialogue too, because there's a lot of snappy dialogue, especially with the Frog Brothers. And I think that was very fun. But to me, still the best line in the movie is Grandpa at the end, because he said the way it's delivered and how he just says it as calm as can be after just whole crazy mess went down. It's just
one thing living in Santa Carla I could never stomach. All the damn vampires.
And then it goes right into People Are Strange as it kind of fades out on a shot of Jason Patrick. And
they're all looking at him going, you knew?
So to me, that is the most quotable, that outside of Michael, that is probably the most quotable line of this movie. And it just works so well. And it's a very unique ending to a film too, to end with that kind of line. So
what about you, Erin? You got some quotes?
It's funny, when we were watching it yesterday, and my mum, first time she's ever seen it, so she actually really laughed at the going in and getting the holy water. Yeah. She thought that was a very funny scene. But looking at the trivia on IMDb, they were quoting about a documentary called Blood-Sucking Cinema, which I ended up finding on YouTube and watched. It was only an hour, and it's about vampires in cinema. And they talked about with Joel Schumacher, and he said about that death by stereo that in the test screenings, there was so much screaming and yelling that, yay, that vampire's death, that no one heard Corey Haim say death by stereo. So he had to extend it. And that's why that scene of that vampire dying pose for so long because they had to get over everyone going, yeah.
That makes complete sense because it just goes on for like another 30 seconds. And you're like,
he hit it, and then Corey Haim said death by stereo. But then they did the test screenings and no one heard it, and it was the best one in the whole thing. But my favourite of all time, and I have used it, is the when Sam says to Michael, "Are you freebasing, Michael? Inquiring minds want to know." Always, it stuck with me all the time. But I mean, look, it is very, you can see where probably Joss Whedon had gone to this movie and gotten this snappy dialogue, and just with cultural references about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And, and then you have a look at just the way of Sam's room is hysterical because Joel Schumacher and his picture of the very, very, very gay picture of Rob Lowe.
Yeah. Yes.
You're like, that's a girl's poster, maybe not a young boy's poster.
Yes.
The Molly Ringwald poster, and then the weird was it girls' school reform or whatever the movie poster from Reformer Schoolgirls or something or high school. Yeah, it was a weird setup of what Sam would have. I don't know if he'd have that picture of Rob Lowe in that look.
One of the more famous quotes, of course, is if all the dead were to stand up, we'd have one hell of a population problem. But one that Corey said early in the film when Michael's chasing Star, he goes, "I'm at the mercy of your sex glands." I thought that was really good. But Corey Feldman's Frog, he has some of the best lines. He says, "Flies, we're all on the right trail. Flies are the undead, and the undead go together like bullets and guns." And he goes, and I like when Feldman Frog, I'm going to call him Feldman Frog. He explains that no two vampires go out the same way, which I thought was fascinating. And they show that in the film. Holy shit, the attack of Eddie Munster. Also, your boys, my boys, the blood-sucking Brady Bunch. I thought that was a good one as well. So, okay, so guys and girls, I got a question for you. I think some of these answers might be obvious, but who is your movie crush on the film? Let's start with Jennifer. Kiefer, why?
He's, it's Kiefer. I mean, he looked so good. He had the bleach blonde mullet. He's kind of he's the bad boy. All the other, and if you look, all of the other male characters in the movie are medium to dark brown hair. And Kiefer is the only one with that really blonde bleached hair, which I think also plays to the end when he dies, that angelic kind of look. It makes him stand out and kind of just he draws your attention. And so, it was 87. I was 17. Hello. It's Kiefer.
What about you, Erin?
Oh yeah, definitely Kiefer. Jason Patric's a good-looking guy. Like, he is a good-looking guy, but again, I agree with Jennifer. He just having that bleached hair, and he's not a tall guy, Kiefer. So everybody else is actually taller than him, but he stands out. He literally glows, and that is. I agree with that bit at the end when he becomes himself again, and he does. He looks like an angel, but it's just he just oozes magnetism, just this strength of a look, of a little smile. That's all he needs to do, and I think everybody said that when it was, when they were filming it, just how much of this sort of animal magnetism he had.
Knowing what I already knew how you felt about Kiefer Sutherland, and we've had this discussion about the best mullets ever, and he's your favorite mullet, and he just rocks it. And when I was watching, I was going, "Damn, it is a good-looking man. Damn it!"
His voice.
It's not a mullet, though. You know what I mean? He wears a mullet. Like, you look at MacGyver or anybody else wearing a mullet and you go, he's wearing a mullet. But for some reason, I think it's just the way it's cut too. He doesn't seem like it's the movie.
It's not like achy breaky heart mullet, it's so.
No.
Kyle, who's your movie crush? Can't be Jamie Gertz.
Sorry. It's Jamie Gertz, and there's not even a contest of it. Who didn't want a little star in their life?
This is true. Yeah.
So before you start drooling, Kevin, and we have to pick you off the floor, can I just say, rewatching that, Diane Weiss had the most beautiful face.
She's gorgeous, actually. Yeah.
She is so pretty, and it's weird now because she was 39. I looked her up to see how old she was when she did it, and of course she was playing the mum, and she was the hippie mum.
And she just won an Oscar too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were assuming she had Michael at like probably 18. You know, but watching her and looking at her, she was utterly stunning, and I'm going to go out there. As much as Star was gorgeous, and I love that skirt, and Jamie Gertz is lovely, she is technically prettier than Jamie Gertz.
Going to disagree with you on that, but she is pretty.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin on that. But come on, Kevin. We know you're having those dreams of Alex Winter.
Now that was a mullet.
That was a mullet.
Okay, so guys, this is directed by Joel Schumacher, and one of the reasons why we wanted to jump on doing The Lost Boys here, because they just had their recent anniversary when it was first released in July of '87, but he just passed away this year, and he's done a lot of great pictures. He gets a lot of crap for the Batman movies for obvious reasons, and we talked a little bit about that with this Couch Potato Theater that we did with me and Kyle did with Haley on Batman Forever, because we love that film, and we talked about some of Joel Schumacher's other films, and I was just curious, Erin, what other films that he's done that you liked, and where do you put this film in that lineup?
Oh, he's a very slick director. It's very stylish. Everything looks good. So St. Elmo's Fire. Hello. I love the Phantom of the Opera. I know a lot of people were a bit like, Gerard Butler, but I love the show, and I love the movie. I thought it looked beautiful. He did A Time to Kill, didn't he? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Another great show.
Falling Down.
Flatliners. Falling Down. Well, I wouldn't sit there and go, yay, let's watch Falling Down as a happy show to watch. And I wouldn't do that with Flatliners either, but still visually amazing. So he had a very MTV look about his films, like Tony Scott did. They have this sort of very polished look to them. And he did some great stuff. Did he do The Client?
Yes.
Yes, another good one. I'm trying to pick them off the top of my brain. I mean, he had heaps of stuff.
Jennifer, what about you? What are some of your other favorite films, and where does Lost Boys fall in that?
So the other one that I liked was Phone Booth, and I went to see that specifically not because Kiefer was on screen, but because his voice was prominent throughout that movie.
That's right. He was the guy that was the threatening voice. Guy. Yeah.
And that's I
completely forgot about that. Yeah.
So that one, The Lost Boys, Phone Booth, St. Elmo's Fire. I like Flatliners. It's funny because if you look at Flatliners, that's where he met Julia Roberts, and then they were engaged. And then when she dumped him 2 days before the wedding, and who did she run off with?
Jason Patrick.
Ireland. Like, what the? Why? But it's just you kind of read these lists and see all the interconnectivity between, and it's like, okay, this is starting to make sense now. But Phone Booth, Flatliners.
Kyle, you and I. Oh, go ahead, Erin.
Well, he actually, just looking up Joel Schumacher now, he did heaps of films where it was another amazing one. He did Tigerland. He was the one who introduced Colin Farrell.
That's true. That was one of Colin's first big films. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And then he came back.
But he also did a couple of In Excess videos, and he did Flick and The Devil Inside Me. Yep. Which he directed those. And then, of course, they were, of course, in Lost Boys.
Kyle, we gave our thoughts on Joel Schumacher and his, obviously his huge IMDb list here when we did the Batman Forever Couch Potato Theater, which is out. You can go check that out. But did you want to add anything else to it?
Well, I wanted to bring up what Jennifer said about Phone Booth because, while not an outstanding film, Kiefer in that movie with just his voice carries that film.
It does. He's Yeah, I remember that now.
It was meant to be a Colin Farrell star making thing, but Kiefer just steals that movie, just with his voice alone and just his presence, just in speaking. But it's really interesting to see because I think Joel Schumacher worked with two people who kind of, for a while, were considered the kind of heartthrob actors. Kiefer in the 80s, and then Colin Farrell in the early 90s and 2000s.
Gotcha.
So I think it's kind of interesting some of the setups for people and breaks he's given people throughout his career.
Yeah.
Like Matthew McConaughey brought him out in Time to Kill.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. So Joel Schumacher, he had said he had one of the greatest casts in the world. That's what and they are what make the film, he says. Most of the younger cast members are relatively unknown. Schumacher and Marion Doherty met with many candidates. Jason Patric was approached early on by Schumacher to play Michael, but Patric had no interest in doing a vampire film and turned it down many times. Eventually, he was won over by Schumacher's vision and his promise to allow the cast a lot of creative input in making the film. And according to Kiefer Sutherland, Patric was really instrumental in adapting the script with Schumacher and shaping the film. And Schumacher envisioned the character of Star of being a waifish blonde similar to Meg Ryan, but he was convinced by Jason Patric to consider Jamie Gertz, who had worked with him on Patric in Solar Babies. It came out in 86. Schumacher was impressed, but only at Patric's insistence did he finally cast Gertz. Schumacher was surprised when his first choice of the role of Lucy, Diane Wiest, accepted the role, as she had just recently won the Academy Award for supporting actress in Hannah and Her Sisters. After seeing Kiefer's portrayal of Tim in At Close Range, Schumacher arranged a meeting with him and they got along very well, and Sutherland had just completed work on Stand By Me. When he was offered the role of David, Schumacher said Sutherland can do almost anything. He's a born character actor, and you can see it in The Lost Boys. He has the least amount of dialogue in the movie, but his presence is extraordinary, and we've all attested to that and talked about that. But back to the cast, guys. I want to get your thought maybe on the rest of the cast here, some of your other standouts. Go to you, Jennifer.
So in doing the research and going through this list, it's funny, on the younger side of the cast, so the Lost Boys and the Frog Brothers and all that, the person with the most experience going into this movie was Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
He had credits back to 76. He'd been acting in commercials since he was like a baby. And if you think about that, this was in 87. For the names that are in this movie to know that, he was on television shows, he had done movies, he'd done commercials, he'd been on screen for most of his life. I thought that was really interesting to see that he had like 10, 11 years worth of experience.
Yeah, that's funny.
going into this. You get into like Diane Wiest, I see her as like the 90s mom. I mean, she was in Parenthood. She was in The Birdcage. She's always that kind of naive mom that was in those movies and in this one as well, just kind of bumbling. But she's like the sweetest mom. I would love to have her as mom. Yeah. She's awesome.
Erin, what about you? Do you have any comments on the rest of the cast?
Look, I think they were all good. I mean, the Lost Boys themselves, other than Kiefer, didn't really get a look in, but did they have to? Not at all, it was all just for looks. But yeah, watching it again, Diane Wiest, she was so sweet, and she is that. So she's always played those sort of sweet characters. And is it Bernard Herrmann? Is it?
Edward
Herrmann, who played Max.
Edward Herrmann. I'm thinking
there's Bernard Hughes, who plays grandmother, and then grandpa. Excuse me.
And then Bernard Herrmann did the music to Psycho, but we won't go there. Edward Herrmann, I thought he was lovely. I mean, I always remember him from Gilmore Girls, and also from who played another great and amazing 80s film, was the husband to Goldie Hawn's bitchy version in Overboard, and he was wonderful. Watching that, because it's funny seeing them as an older person and then looking at them going, they're so young. And then Kiefer Sutherland looks 12. Yeah. But I mean, Corey Feldman I knew, because you had Corey from Well, Corey Haim had done Lucas, and I mean, unless you'd seen it on video, you probably would never seen it. But Corey Feldman was literally Stand By Me. Yep. He'd done that. He'd done
Goonies.
He killed. He'd done the Goonies, so he really was the star of those ones in it. I think probably Jason Patric might have turned it away originally because his dad is Jason Miller, and he was the priest from The Exorcist. If you didn't know that was a little bit trivia.
Did not know that, actually.
And he was always sort of, I think Jason Patric really wanted to be the serious actor. He was a good-looking guy, but he didn't want to do the whole sort of, pretty boy stuff. And I think that's what he sort of, why he didn't want to take it originally. And, I mean, apparently looking at trivia, Corey Feldman had started getting a bit of trouble with drugs, going out and partying, probably with Drew Barrymore, and taking lots of cocaine. And he got fired. He actually got fired. Joel Schumacher fired him.
Are you stepping on trivia already?
Yeah. And then they reinstated him when he said that, he would work harder.
Yeah. No, it's, I think he's grateful that he kissed his butt and came back and stuff. Yeah. Interesting, too, is I also found out with the special features that Corey Haim lost out to the character that Feldman played. And so he'd heard about this other Corey, and then finally they worked together on this film. Kyle, what are your comments on the rest of the cast?
Well, first of all, we need to address the elephant in the room, because I don't care what anybody says. If Corey Haim could have stayed away from the drugs, he would have had one hell of a career. Because I think of the younger actors of this time, he was one of the better ones, and just got so lost on the drugs that it was a shame. Edward Herrmann, I thought, was great as Max, playing up this kind of like nerdy guy. And I remember the first time I saw this, I had no idea that Max was actually the
fooled me.
I mean, it was a complete shock there. And you know what? I got to give some love to Bernard Hughes in this. Of course, I remember him.
Grandpa.
I also remember him from Tron, as well as later on in Doc Hollywood. He was phenomenal in this, and I think he kind of steals this movie in some ways.
He does. Yeah. Yeah. He's got all, you're wondering why he's got all the creepy, like, I guess, what is it? Horns and dead animals. And it seems like
taxidermy.
Thank you. Taxidermy. And he like comes in and puts in a different one in Sam's room. It's just, it's so funny. Yeah.
No, but I mean, he's great in it. And, it just makes me want to go see what The Widow Johnson was all about too.
I do have to say that one of my favorite scenes with him in it is when they've raced back and Michael's I think they've killed Alex Winter, and they race back, and Michael's got Star asleep in his arms, and they're covered in glitter blood and all this stuff, and they're running up the stairs, and Grandpa goes down and goes, "Michael, didn't I tell you what to say about filling the car up? And you take it out?" And they're like, "No, Grandpa." "Well, now you do." Totally, all this mayhem's happening. Grandpa's just walked off again.
Yeah, he gets some great lines in there. He's funny, especially when he's like messing with him and scaring him and stuff. I love that. But I'm a huge fan of Edward Herrmann in this one. And I saw an interview with him on the special features, and he really liked, when he was shown the script, he was all about doing it because he was really excited about playing a character that wasn't a historical figure that he's always done, and it was just that this kind of nerdy guy that was very cool, and he's very tall, and you can see that in the comic book shop and stuff. So, but I want to give it up to Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. I think they're both great actors. I think they've gotten some crap scripts with the stuff that they've worked with. But there's some scenes I've seen them in several films, and and you're right about Corey Haim, Kyle. If he would have just lived a little bit cleaner, I think things would have worked out a lot better for him, and he would have gotten some better roles. And same thing for Corey Feldman. He fell into drug issues as well. And I just recently watched an obscure film that he did with Meredith Salinger called Edge of Honor. And he was actually really good in this. It was basically about some scouts that come across some gun runners and stuff. And he was really good in that. And I'm like, man, if he had only stayed off the drugs, he probably would have been offered more parts as well. So Let's head on down to some specs here about the film. By the way, let's give it up for Nanook, played by Cody the dog, and Thorn, played by Folsom the dog. I know you'd like that, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Everybody wanted an Alaskan Malamute.
I know. So cute.
Everybody
Yes.
wanted.
Or a white German Shepherd.
Now, the running time was 98 minutes. That's a good running time, about an hour and...
Now, every movie should be.
Yes, exactly. Release date was July 31st, 1987. R rating, of course, which was nice. It gave a little edge to it. The budget was only $8.5 million, and opening weekend was a little over $5 million. Total gross, $32 million, made money, and of course, I'm sure did a lot better on video as well. Let's get into some reviews here. Of course, I always like to go with Roger. He's always hit or miss here. He gave the film 2.5 out of 4 stars, praising the cinematography and a cast that's good right down the line, but ultimately describing Lost Boys as a triumph of style over substance and an ambitious entertainment that starts out well but ends up selling its soul.
Yeah, this is coming from the guy who wrote Valley of the Dolls.
Beyond Valley of the Dolls.
Beyond Valley of the Dolls, that's right. Beyond Valley of the Dolls.
Karen James of the New York Times called Diane Weist's character a dopey mom and Bernard Hughes' character a caricature of a feisty old grandpa. She found the film more comedy than horror and the finale funny. Elaine Showalter commented the film's brilliant portrayal portrays vampirism as a metaphor of the kind of mythic male bonding that resists growing up commitment, especially marriage. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film currently holds a 70% based on 67 reviews, so that's good. The site critics' consensus reads, flawed but eminently watchable. Joel Schumacher's teen vampire thriller blends horror, humor, and plenty of visual style with a standout performance from the cast of full young 80s stars. And Cinema Score gave the grade of an A-. Jennifer, any of these reviews jump out at you here? Fair, not fair?
I'm always, we talked about this in the 10 Things podcast. I'm always interested with reviewers that are picking apart a film and looking for its cinematic value and how cerebral it is and how and it's like, no, this was a movie made for teenagers. And it's like, okay, yeah, so mom may be dopey, but at 17, we think all of our moms are dopey. And we want the cute boy and the girl. I mean, it's like, it's popcorn movie. That's what it is. It's not meant to be an Oscar winner. So I'm only giving it 2.5 out of 4 stars because it's just kind of predictable. And it's like, well, yeah, vampirism is a trope in itself. So what are you expecting?
Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
So that's my problem with most of the reviewers.
Erin, you agree with Jennifer on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm never been a massive fan of the whole, metaphors and, the hidden meanings behind things. Sometimes it is what it is, and that's what Lost Boys is. Yeah. It is what it is, to quote Trump. But I'm going to disagree with the Diane Weiss thing, the dopey mum. Actually, she's a caring mum because she sits there at one time and says to Michael, "Are we still friends? Let's talk." Yeah. Now, a lot of parents would just dismiss you. Would they even? And it
you
was
see it in her face in that scene, and it's very
it was a time, as you said, it's the 80s and the latchkey kids and parents working and stuff like that. She's gotten divorced. She's obviously been a hippie parent. We get that at the start. She loves her boys. She's taken them to, and she turned around. The father said, you didn't come well out of this marriage. And she said, well, I just didn't want to go into a horrible divorce. She didn't want to put her kids through all that stuff,
Excellent
to
point.
get a big deal. And then she's sitting there and I mean, you know why they call her dopey? Because she's sweet.
Yeah.
And she, she cares and she does, she cracks it. She wants to find, love again. And she does get annoyed when Sam's being, stupid. And it's, even at the end, she doesn't, she decides to give herself to save Sam.
Yeah.
So, that person can go suck itself. All
right, guys. One of the most important things about this movie is the sax player. And that leads us into the music.
The
We're going to talk about the sax player in a moment here, but I want to talk about the music first. Thomas Newman wrote the original score as an eerie blend of orchestra and organ arrangements, while the music soundtrack contains a number of notable songs and several covers, including Good Times, a duet between INXS and former Cold Chisel lead singer Jimmy Barnes, which reached number 2 on the Australian charts in '87. This cover version of the 60s Australian hit, The Easy Beats, was originally recorded to promote the Australian Made Tour of Australia in early 1987, headlined by INXS and Barnes. Tim Capello, who of course is the sax player, cover of The Call's I Still Believe was featured in the film as well as a soundtrack. Capello's makes a small cameo appearance in the film, playing the song on the Santa Cruz boardwalk with his saxophone and bodybuilder muscles on display. The soundtrack also featured a cover version of the Doors song People Are Strange by Echo and the Bunnymen. The song features in the film as an alternate shortened version of the slightly different musical arrangement. Lou Gramm, lead singer of Foreigner, also recorded Lost in the Shadows for the soundtrack, along with a video which features a clip from the film. The theme song, Cry Little Sister, was originally recorded by Gerard McMahon under the pseudonym Gerald McMahon for the soundtrack, and later re-released on his album G. Tom Mac in 2000. In the film's sequel, Cry Little Sister was covered by a Seattle-based band, Aiden, and appeared again on the closing credits of The Lost Boys, The Thirst. A lot of great songs on here. Jennifer, I want to touch with you first on these. What were some of your favorite songs on here?
The Echo and the Bunnymen cover of The Doors.
Do you hold on real quick? Do you agree with Erin and I that we think that that's actually a better version than the Doors version?
Yes. I think Echo and the Bunnymen was one of those bands in the 80s that was kind of alternative. They were a little quirky. And I think the arrangement they came up with it, you always improve. Usually you can't improve upon the original, but there's been a couple songs in history where it's been rearranged. They've taken it into a different direction, and it's worked really well. And this is one of those instances. Also, INXS, loved INXS. So those are two that stood out to me that I still love to this day.
Kyle, I'm going to come to you next, but Erin, I wanted you to touch on the soundtrack here. This is one of the iconic 80s soundtracks.
Oh, I love the soundtrack. I still listen to the soundtrack.
What are some of your favorites?
Yeah. Oh, the People Are Strange, so much better than the Doors, so much better. Apparently, though, there's a thing about in the trivia about the picture of the Doors and Echo Bunnymen featured in parts of the movie, but I Cry Little Sister.
Yeah, great song.
So good, so good. Lost in the Shadows. Yeah, like that. It's still playable now. Yeah, it's great.
What about you, Kyle?
And I think
go ahead.
Also pushed the movie as well. And I think it also pushed the movie as well. It went hand in hand. It wasn't something. It was one of those things where the movie was great, but then also, like with Dirty Dancing, it held its own with its soundtrack.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, Kyle, what about you? Any of your favorite songs on here?
I think the use of People Are Strange in this film is absolutely perfect.
Oh, yeah. You get it a couple times. You get the opening monologue, and then later on.
Yep, as Kevin crashes everything.
Sorry, a picture fell down.
But I mean, the fact that how it closes out with People Are Strange, especially after that final quote, is just amazing. But like Erin, it's Cry Little Sister. I mean, that song is so powerful and just fits in this film absolutely perfect. And it sets the mood for so many different things. And I think that it's one of those songs that when you think of The Lost Boys, you think of that song. It's like that song is forever in eternity tied to that film.
People Are Strange, yes. Jennifer?
I think something else that, we talk about movie soundtracks and movies of the 80s, and, they go hand in hand, and there's something with 80s movies. Maybe it was because MTV was still a child and still in its infancy, but this is another movie where the soundtrack can stand on its own, but also plays an integral role, and it's weaved together so well.
Agreed.
We talked about like Valley Girl and the other movies that we talked in the Time Warp podcast. this is another one where they knew what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it visually, but they also knew what they wanted to do musically, and they did it really well with this soundtrack.
One of the
Sorry,
going
Erin.
with that thing back to favorite quotes, and what Jennifer just brought up is another favorite quote is when Sam says, "If there's no TV, it means there's no MTV."
It's true, yeah.
And that was when we had music. That's what we watched.
One of the standout performers, though, and the songs, of course, is "I Still Believe," covered by Timmy Capello, the shirtless sax guy, one of the most iconic characters, steals his scene, comes in, shaking his booty. He's all oiled down and tan. He's got the long, like, hair, mullety thing going on. Before I go on and gush over this guy, ladies, sexy or not, Jennifer?
So if Cyndi Lauper and Rob Halford had a child and Ravishing Rick Rude got his DNA in there, that is it's the sax guy from this movie. Like, I sat there watching, I'm going, okay, that's what it is. It's Cyndi Lauper, Rob Halford, and Ravishing Rick Rude. They had a love child, and that's who it is.
So no?
No.
Erin?
He's wearing tie-dye tight leggings with a leather thong with a studded metal belt with a belly dancer's chain around his neck. He is greased up with all of the Crisco in the world. He's got a permed mullet. What is right? What is right about this?
All right, hold on. Let's let Erin chime in here. Sexy or not?
No, it didn't do it for me. I can see his purpose and I can see what they were going for. Wasn't he the sax player for Tina Turner?
Yes.
Didn't he do?
Yes.
He did. We Don't Need Another Hero.
And
Isn't
one
that-
of the living from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome as well. Yep.
So it's got it. He was right for a post-apocalyptic dystopian band that was playing on a boardwalk look.
Kyle, does he do it for you?
I don't know if he does it for me, but he's a great fit in this film and is now one of the all-time greatest gifts of all time.
Okay, so he has a very extensive music career. He's toured with Eric Carmen and comedian Billy Crystal, worked with Peter Gabriel on his album. He toured with Carly Simon later that same year, once appearing on stage in a leather G-string as well as chains and a dog leash, which Simon pulled him onto stage. So that was kind of his thing. What's funny is he's become this iconic character, and he does convention appearances. And I posted a couple of pictures here in the notes, guys. But when he signs autographs, he doesn't dress exactly like he did on there. He actually wears a tank top now and jeans, but he still wears that leather codpiece around there with the chains. And of course, he does often pose with his saxophone. So he's still doing his thing. All right, guys, I want to ask you guys real quick. There's this article that I did, and you kind of touched on it earlier, I think, Erin, about family in this film. And one thing that I really noticed about this film was the brotherly love between Sam and Michael, and this kind of dichotomy of where we have the mother, and they talk about it. She's, not trying to go through this messy divorce. And this is something we really didn't see a lot of on screen, maybe a little bit, single mom stuff going on with Karate Kid. But this kind of brought this other brotherhood thing, too, with people that don't have families and that might be attracted to the Lost Boys. Jennifer, what did you think about the theme of family and how this kind of had an effect on pop culture?
I think it kind of brought it into the light. Like, divorce was, latchkey kids and divorce in the 80s was still frowned upon. It was still, one of my favorite terms, broken home. Mm-hmm. A broken home is, your parents are divorced and your mom has to work now and you come home by yourself and you have to cook it. And it's like, she kind of she owned it. Diane Weist's character, she owned it. She's like, I'm going to take my boys. I made the choice to do the divorce as quickly as possible. I'm going to do everything I can. And it kind of shined a light on it. It's like, you know what? It's not as devastating or as bad as, we all believe by sweeping it under the rug. I also think that, family is what you make it. So you have the nuclear family, the biological family, but then you also have all these separate little families, with the Lost Boys, and then with Max's character wanting to create a whole new family. So there's just so many layers and interpretations of family within this movie that it's not just the nuclear family, the traditional biological mom, dad, and 2 kids.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Erin? Did you notice that when you're watching the film, or that kind of sink in later on rewatches?
Well, probably when you get older and watch rewatches. I mean, at the time, you didn't think about it at all. You're just looking at Kiefer Sutherland going, how do I date him? And again, over time, you see it through different eyes. So then you get to a certain age, or you get to a certain part of your life. And so, so I think seeing it now, when you first watch it in one way, and then coming back, as I said, watching it now, watching Diane Weiss and watching it with, Edward Herman and stuff, trying to create that's what he wanted. He wanted a mother for his boys, and that she was caring. He saw that at the start when she helps a little boy find his mum, or can you help him when he's lost? And then he says, well done, and gives her the lollipop, so he sees this thing. But yeah, I think it's like Jennifer takes it right, and she's got it.
Any thing you want to add to that, Kyle?
Just I think this was very much a product of where things were with families in the 80s. I think Jen hit it on it pretty well, where you had a lot of families who were doing the Brady Bunch thing in one fashion or another. And I think there was still, like Jen said, there was still kind of it was, oh my gosh, you're doing this. And it was, I think it was one of those things to where it played up on that, but it played up on it so subtly until the end, until Max kind of revealed himself and what his plot was. And when you get that, then you go back and you look at like the first time he sees their mom and how he reacts to watching her help this small lost child and everything like that. Then it explains his motivations completely. And he's just evil. Max is evil. The whole definition of evil stepfather.
One of the things
I don't know if he is. I don't know if he is.
He wants to.
He wants to survive. He's like anyone, That's because that he wants his family, his boys, to have a mother. I don't find him as an evil thing. He's just different. Evil would be as he went and killed them all, and then that would be it. He actually sort of does want them all to live together.
Yeah, he wants to expand the family. So one of the things about this film that's very cool is we've got these great characters, but one of the biggest characters in this film is Santa Carla, otherwise known as Santa Cruz. Raise your hand if you've been to Santa Cruz.
Me.
Jennifer, have you been to Santa Cruz? Really? No? Okay, no, Kyle hasn't. But Erin and I did. We took a trip there in May of 2019. She's like, I want to go to Santa Cruz. I want to go see Lost Boys. And I said, yes, please. So we did a little trip up there, and we went to the Santa Cruz boardwalk, had a little fun there. And then one of the highlights is that we actually went to visit Joe Ferrara, who still runs his comic book shop that was used in the film, and he has a small cameo in the film as well. And one of the cool things that you get to do when you go there, and he's very friendly about it, and he encourages it, even his awesome staff that works there, is that you actually get to hold the original prop of one of those vampire comics that he has on hand. And the one that he has is the one that says Vampires Everywhere. But as I was rewatching the film, I realized there's actually 2 comics that are shown in the film as Vampires Anywhere and Destroy All Vampires. But he pulls it down, you get to take a picture of it, and we got to take a picture with him. Great guy. And Erin, I wanted you to speak to this and your experience of visiting Santa Cruz.
So going back to the listeners, the actual comic store wasn't on the boardwalk.
Mm-mm.
That was somewhere else.
Yes.
And the one that we went to wasn't the original. Remember, it got burnt down.
Yeah, because the earthquake, it got destroyed in the earthquake,
It got destroyed in the earthquake.
and
That's
so
it,
he had
right.
to
It got
move it
destroyed.
to another location.
Yeah. So when you watch the film and since being there, we can see it's a little disjointed on where they're walking. It's not like in a sort of straight line and everything's in the one position. Now looking back on it, it's like, well, okay, no, how come they're standing there? Where's that being taken? So the actual, as I said, when Sam goes into the comic store, that was actually in Santa Cruz, not in the boardwalk.
Right.
It was around the corner somewhere. And then, of course, there was an earthquake and then they moved it. But no, we found it and the guy was absolutely wonderful and we got lots of pictures. And the second scene when Sam goes in, not the first time, but the second time, there's a guy playing pinball.
Yes.
Or he's playing Space Invaders or something with another guy and he's got a beard. That's the guy who owns the actual comic store.
What was your impression of the boardwalk itself? Obviously, it didn't have the iconic, a Ferris wheel. That is not really.
Yeah, the Ferris wheel being moved.
Yeah, but
we had fun. It was funny because watching People Are Strange at the start, where you see that little sort of, they got that thing where you go on what's that ride where you get sort of, I don't know, it's like above the sea.
Yeah, the air cars things or something.
Yeah,
the gondolas. Yeah.
Yeah, we did that. And we also did the iconic, and did I sit where Kiefer Sutherland might have touched of the Ferris, not the Ferris
carousel.
wheel,
the carousel, yeah.
The carousel, yeah. So we did the carousel. So we actually did that original carousel, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
Well, we're going to take a little break because we got some trivia and a few other things to do. But we're going to let you know what else is happening on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Bloody Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. End Zone, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, we got a little trivia here talking about Lost Boys, 1987 classic here. Event organizers, Monopoly Events, created the biggest Lost Boys reunion ever in 2019 at their annual horror fan convention for the love of horror, which included Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patric, Alex Winter, Jameson Newlander, and Billy Wirth, along with the musicians from the film, G. Tom Mack and Tim Capello, who all appeared at the event and were reunited for the first time in over 30 years. Both Tom Mack and Tom Capello performed separate live music sets on the event stage to the vast crowd. All the celebrities posed together for photographs in a purpose-built cave set modeled on the vampire cave scene in The Lost Boys original movie, which was complete with the poster of Jim Morrison, a bottle of fake blood, and David the Vampire's wheelchair. This was Corey Haim and Corey Feldman's first film together, which marked the popular start of a popular 80s trend, the two Coreys, in which Feldman and Haim starred together in a number of teenage films. Jennifer, I wanted to ask you, of the other Corey films, which one did you like? What was one of your favorites?
Dream a Little Dream.
Dream a Little Dream, yeah.
I love that movie. I think it's so sweet. And it's, the whole time travel and the body and everything. I saw that movie and I just kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite.
What about you, Erin? Do you remember any others that you liked?
Well, do I bring it up? First of all, just want to go back on the reunion. Do you think that Jason Patrick and Kiefer Sutherland sort of like get together and go, wow, we dodged a bullet?
Eskimo Brothers. Anyway, Kyle, what about you?
No, I'm just, but you can go.
Erin, bring up her film.
Go ahead, Erin. Which one?
So, no, not my. I don't know because I never watched Dream a Little Dream, and I didn't really see any Corey Feldmans, but I was in a Corey Feldman, the two Coreys film.
Yes, you were.
National Lampoon's Last Resort, where I am on the cover of the DVD.
Yes, you are.
On the back.
Or no, wait, I think you're on the back cover. You're on the back cover.
I'm on the back cover.
Yes.
I'm in the trailer for about 2 seconds, and I'm only at the start of the film. So what happened is that when I went to America in, I think, 93, we were trying to find work, and I got a job as an extra on a movie called National Lampoon's Last Resort, starring the two Coreys. And we had to go down to Point Doon, and I had to hire a car, which I think cost me the whole day of what I got paid, and drive down to Malibu. And I was like a girl in a black bikini, and I had to feed Corey Feldman grapes. And then we run around. Yes, there it is there. There I am in a hat. And Kevin's showing a picture to everyone. And then we run around and grab a number as if to sleep with him, and then this other girl comes out of the water, and that was it. So it is the worst movie. I've never watched all the way through, but it's horrible. Corey was lovely. Corey Haim was around, and so was Will Smith. And that was what I did. I was in a Corey Feldman and a Corey Haim film.
I have actually watched this all the way through. And
thank God I'm at the start in the credits.
I can't believe I'm going to be marrying the person that fed grapes to one of the Coreys. So there we go. Kyle, I forgot where I was. What say you?
I have always had a personal soft spot for License to Drive.
There you go. That is a good one. That was Corey Haim was good in that one.
Oh yeah, he was great in that one. And who can forget Mercedes Lane?
Yes, one of my guilty pleasures of all time is the erotic thriller they did together with Nicole Eggert, Blown Away. And I actually thought that they were both really good in that. They were probably both on drugs the entire film, but it was kind of like a Basic Instinct type thing, but for teens. And it got pretty.
Did you watch TV show?
No. Mm-mm.
I watched 2 seasons. The first season was different, and then the second season became like Dr. Phil.
The movie was filmed in only 3 weeks. This film, like $8.5 million, boom, in and out. They were able to. They talked about how well the cast worked together, and they were able to get all these shots that they needed done really, really well. It says here that the original screenplay. I'm sorry. Here we go. Both the bandstand that the band is playing on the first time Michael sees Star and the Frog Brothers comic shop was destroyed in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. And that was the same one that also ended up destroying the comic book store as well. But every year at the landmark Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk in Santa Cruz, California, this film is screened as part of the park's free summer movie series. Beachgoers may bring outdoor furniture and supplies to watch after sunset. Many features of the town shown can still be recognized, most notably the rides and many of the games on the boardwalk itself. Jamie Gertz was actually recommended by Jason Patrick. We talked about that real quick. But I want to get to something very interesting, and I think it would kind of a fun little thing to talk about is Of all the vampire deaths in this film, which one was your favorite? We had, of course, Alex Winter, who played Marco. He was the first one to get staked as he was upside down, cave stake, and all that blood came gushing down with the glitter in it. Paul, the blonde vamp, as I call him, he had the holy bathwater death. Thought that was kind of fun. Dwayne, the brunette, you missed, sucker. Death by stereo. Arrow through the heart, electrocuted by stereo system. He got cooked. Kiefer got pierced by the antler collection. Probably one of the ones that Jennifer had in the picture here. And of course, Edward Herman Max had a car stake ram job. Boom. Kyle, I want to go to you first. Which one did you like the best? Which one had the best death?
I think it's Paul with the holy bathwater, because the chaos that ensues afterwards, it just shows you don't let your vampire remains go down the drain.
Yes, that's true.
But there's a quick shot there too where you see just his skeleton, and so you see his skeleton and the vampire teeth and stuff, and it's so quick, but it's a really cool effect that they use in that as well.
This is very true. Yeah, Jennifer, which death was your favorite?
Well, let me just preface this by saying that pretty much all of those would kill anybody. Gemsbach horns through your back, stake through your heart, getting rammed onto a stereo, being shot up. You know, the only one that really wouldn't kill you is the holy water, but that holy water has garlic in it. And the myth of garlic, I believe, comes from the fact that garlic, rotten garlic, produces Clostridium botulinum, which is botulism toxin. It takes 2 nanograms per pound to kill a human being, and would take approximately 4 to 5 grams of botulism to wipe out the entire population of the earth.
Wow.
And so, yeah, because I have botulism in my forehead because I have Botox for my migraines. And I was talking to my pain management specialist. He's like, yeah, it takes about 4 to 5 grams. So it's funny in watching all these different ways. If you look at it from the viewpoint of, yeah, pretty much all of these would kill just about anybody. The holy water, you know, being the purification, having Satan and all that, but it's the botulinum that comes from the
way to drop the science. That's awesome. So which one's your favorite?
I like the garlic, the bathtub and the garlic, because it's less obvious. You know, you look at the Gemsbach horn is cool because I work in a taxidermy studio. So when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, what did they kill him with? And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is, which is why I have one. But it's you know, that's the one, is the holy water and the garlic.
What about you, Erin? Which one was yours again?
I have no idea. I don't know. I like all of them. I can't really choose. They're all good.
Yeah.
There's no real favorite. They're all different.
Okay.
Everyone had a different ending, and yeah, I'm gonna be, you know, neutral.
All right. What about you, Kyle? What's your? You already told me, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Death by Stereo. I just thought that was very funny. I liked how he says, you missed. And then all of a sudden, not the second time. And he gets him and explosion of the stereo. I thought that was great. I just got to tell you, so this movie's rated R for violence and some language. But the creepiest scene in the whole movie for me in the last few times, I don't know if you guys will agree with you or not, but seeing Kiefer Sutherland's weird bat feet... It's just gross.
No. What you won't ever get past me is the eating of Chinese food in this movie.
Yes. The maggots. It's maggots, Michael. It's maggots.
And that's not my problem. My problem is, so most vampires in film have their fangs on their canines. And if you watch this movie, the vampire fangs are on the lateral incisors, which are right outside the front teeth, which is, when you look at that, you go, wait a minute, something's not quite right. And there have been other films where it's been placed there, but the majority of placement in literature, in films, and TV have been the canines.
Yeah.
So they're spaced out further. And I was watching it, I'm like, wait a minute, what is wrong?
I always thought it made it look, they looked a lot more beastly that way. And I thought that was kind of cool. So I don't know. It was like, it didn't sit right. It felt wrong to me. And I don't know if that was an intentional choice. Because I know V. Neal was the makeup artist, head makeup artist on this. So I don't know if that was an intentional choice to differentiate it from the previous iterations of Dracula and Nosferatu and Bram Stoker,
or if it's just something they didn't pay attention to and thought, well, we'll put him here.
Yeah. So it did win. The Lost Boys did win a Saturn Award for Best Horror Film in '87. But let's talk about sequels real quick, guys. There was two: The Lost Boys, The Tribe, Lost Boys, The Thirst. Tribe was in 2008. The Thirst was in 2010. There was other sequels before that intended, as Kyle gives us the facepalm here. Kiefer Sutherland's character David was impaled on the antlers, but does not explode or dissolve, as do the other vampires. He was intended to have survived, which would have picked up the sequel, The Lost Girls. A script for this and other sequels circulated for years. Joel Schumacher made several attempts at a sequel during the 90s, but nothing came to fruition. David makes an appearance in the 2008 comic book series, The Lost Boys Reign of Frogs, which serves as a sequel to the first film and prequel of The Tribe. In March of 2009, MTV reported they've been working on a third film called Lost Boys The Thirst. And in July 2016, Vertigo stated the release of a miniseries comic. But then just recently, the CW boss said that on a passion project's fate after new pilot was rolled, that they are looking at doing a TV series. Kyle, I don't know if you've got an update on that, but I want to know if you do. And then Lost Boys musical is nearly done with Malcolm McDowell in talks to play Max. Kyle, what do you know of the TV series?
It's been in development with the CW for a while, and it was actually greenlit and ready to roll, and then COVID happened.
COVID.
They still, my understanding is they still have every intent to do this. They're very high on the property, especially with the fact that they know that they have a couple of their DC shows that are going to be wrapping up soon. So I think this is something they're high on. They've had great success before with vampire products, with the Vampire Diaries and the originals. So I think they're definitely looking to explore getting back into that. So I think we're going to at least see a pilot and maybe even at least a first season of this, and we'll go from there.
Gotcha. Do you guys want to see this TV series, or at least like, would you have liked to have had a genuine, real sequel, not these weird little, the Frog Boy adventures and stuff like that were done, Jennifer?
If it had gone off as intended with Kiefer Sutherland making an appearance, yeah, I would have been down with that.
Yeah, with the Lost Girls. Yeah. Gotcha. What about you, Erin?
I would have liked to have seen a prequel and seen how they became.
Yeah, that too.
That's interesting because that comes up with the next segment here. I want to ask you guys as we wrap this up.
Going back on the CW Lost Boys show, yes, because I always need a Daggy show to watch, and that would be one of them.
Love it. So you brought that up, Erin. This brings us into some roundtable questions I have, and I didn't put this one down, but how old is Kiefer and the other vampires? How old is Max? We don't really get an idea. We know that Max is the elder, and it looks like he probably sired Kiefer. But I don't know if there's been any backstory written. So that's Erin. I would love to have seen some type of prequel here to hear like how this came about. We know that these murders have been going on for a while, and that we're obviously assuming that it's the Lost Boys that are doing this. But Erin, if you had to speculate, how old are these guys?
Well, I mean, Kiefer talks about the when there was the earthquake and they find that's where their lair is. So whether or not he's around from them, we don't know. And they just go with the times and obviously dress how. I mean, you don't know because he dresses quite with the long jacket, so he could have been around since the early century. We don't know.
Yeah. What do you think, Jennifer?
That's a good point, Erin, that they found that after that earthquake was 1906. April 18th, 1906 was the San Francisco earthquake that they were referencing that hotel to have been destroyed on. So I've never had made that connection. So that could be. And he does kind of, he's the one that's, I guess, got the most, the costuming provides the least amount of clues, whereas the other vampires in the Lost Boys kind of, they're very dated in their looks, whereas Kiefer's is not. You could have Kiefer in the
sort of jackety, long,
right? Because this Kiefer looks like Kiefer in Young Guns. So I mean, it's a very kind of.
He'd be the oldest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to speculate, and Kyle, I wanted to get your opinion on this, I would think that Max is probably a few hundred years old, and then probably sires Kiefer. Maybe Kiefer's close to running around 100, 150 maybe. If he's 100 at this time, obviously during, the late 1800s, the Western is in full effect here. That might have some influence on him. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if we're going to get serious about it, Kiefer's not that old. He used to be this punk in this small Oregon town called Ace. But if you ever wonder what happened to Ace from Stand By Me, now we know. But no, in all seriousness, I would say you're probably right, Kevin. I would say Max is maybe a couple, maybe 300 years old. I would assume that he probably sired David first because he's in so position of that like second in command. Yeah. And so I think I would guess at least David at least to be 100 to 150 years old.
Gotcha. Because Star references that she doesn't reference they. She says you are the reason, or something like David's secret, or what David was hiding. She never says what they are hiding. She never says what they are hiding. She only references David. So they just seem to be ones that are just sort of added on. I mean, I'm assuming that through the years he's probably lost vampires and that's why he wants to get this family.
Thanks to the Frog Brothers,
Well, yeah, but I mean, there would have been
and probably the grandpa too. Grandpa probably did something too.
There's been, and that's why he wants to sort of have this sort of family to bring in the boys because they're just running wild.
Okay, can I throw a thought out real quick?
Yeah, please. This is where the roundtable questions go.
How do we know that maybe David wasn't sired by Max, but David sired the other vampires? Because they all died before David was killed.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And that brings up something I want to ask you guys about. What's really interesting about vampire films is they stick to most of the major vampire rules, and what hurts them, whether it's sunlight and stakes through the heart, or, sometimes it's a holy water, sometimes it isn't, sometimes it's garlic, sometimes it isn't. But what's cool about The Lost Boys is they kind of set their own vampire rules, but they are different. And I wanted to throw this stuff at you and get your opinion on this. Okay, first of all, don't ever invite a vampire into your house. And this is a quote from Max. It renders you powerless. He passes the frog dinner test. I remember hearing about don't ever invite them to the test, but I don't ever remember them being vulnerable, not being vulnerable to other anti-vampire stuff, or things that would tease them to that, I guess. I don't know. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, so Michael slowly becomes a vampire by drinking the blood in the bottle, not getting bitten on the neck or anything like that. I totally forgot about this after I rewatched this again. He doesn't get bit. He drinks this blood, and then he slowly starts to exhibit it and becomes a vampire. So it's weird that we don't really see a lot of biting on necks, really. We see vampires ruthlessly killing people and stuff like that, but we don't see them siring in the normal way that we're used to. Also, too, the man of the house. I want to ask you something. So Max comes in and he says to Michael, "You're the man of the house. You got invited in." Wouldn't Grandpa be the man of the house?
I think that was just him saying, just to get him to, how else would he get him to invite him in? So he's just doing that as like a,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Jennifer, did you have any thoughts on some of the stuff I brought up?
Yeah. So when we talk about vampires and the history and the creation of them, and we go into, there's the Gothic vampire, which was Bram Stoker's Dracula, and there's also the folkloric vampire, which was pre-Bram Stoker's Dracula. It is believed that folkloric vampire was steeped in the plague, and you didn't want the plague to be in your house. You couldn't bury your family members. It ties into that plague. So not inviting the vampire in with the folk origins in Eastern Europe that's where that most likely comes from, is that belief that you don't, the vampire is the representation of the plague. You don't invite it in. You don't have it into your life because it can bring that plague, which can decimate your family.
Right.
So that is kind of the folkloric origins of inviting the vampires into the house.
What about the question of being sired and not beaten, bitten, drinking blood instead? What do you think of that?
So again, with the plague and a pathogen, as opposed to an undead, the biting is a sexualization of vampires and how it's transmitted. Whereas if you're going into the folkloric, again, pre-Bram Stoker, way back, 1700s, 1600s, the transmission of the blood and the bodily fluids and the humors, that is what causes the disease or the infection of vampirism. And so it's the blood being transferred. It's not the bite. It's the virus that is transferred through the plague. Okay. And so that's, the biting was kind of how to get that hypersexualization into that homoerotic or that erotic sense that has been derived in the postmodern in the
So it's like a blood poisoning, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not.
They did that with Dracula. So, and they do it in Buffy. So if they went around and bit everybody, then everybody would become a vampire.
And plus everyone would see the,
that would be like a zombie. You get bitten by a zombie, you become a zombie. So there's a choice. You can either get killed by a vampire where they've just drained you of blood, the end, blah, blah, blah. Or you become a vampire where they choose and then they show it. They bite you and then you have to suck. You have to suck their blood. So they did that in Dracula. Right. And that's why they do the whole thing of, in Dracula, they keep doing it until it's sort of, he goes to Lucy a few times and then she becomes a vampire. He then finally drains her and she changes over. Mina never gets that far. That's the whole thing about how Star and Laddie and Michael, the whole thing is that they haven't done their kill. Right. They haven't killed. So there's what else was there? That if they didn't kill, they die. God, I can't remember what was wrong.
Well, one thing I want to ask you guys too, and Kyle, I want to go to you right now, what you thought of their version of this vampire lore, but also I want you to start with that Michael stays a vampire and Star and Laddie, the kid, until the head vampire is killed. And this is an interesting thing that pops up from time to time, but isn't necessarily all true with all vampire stuff. We see that with stuff like, the alien ship, the lead queen alien ship being killed, and then all the little minions die at the same time. We saw that in episode 1 Star Wars. Of course, we saw that in Independence Day. What is your thought on this vampire lore and that particularly?
As far as that particularly goes, I think it ties into the fact that it's a virus, because maybe the sire is where the virus starts. And so the virus, when the sire dies, it size out whatever the power of that virus is killed. And,
gotcha.
It ties into the aspect of, there's always been the aspect of drinking blood to become a vampire. It's not just because you're bit kills you, but you can either drink who's bitten you's blood, or you have to drink somebody's blood to make the full transformation like they used in The Lost Boys. So I think it's something that outside of Bram Stoker's Dracula and that classic Dracula vampire thing, vampirism has definitely been more of a train to a virus in more modern eras. I think of Underworld. I think of The Strain.
Oh yeah.
So I think they played up a lot more on the virus in the more modern vampire fare.
Good point. So let me ask you guys.
In Vampire Diaries, I couldn't think where it was coming from, where they get bitten, and if they don't feed in that 24 hours, they'll die, or they become a vampire. That's the choice that they have.
That's the choice. Gotcha.
So that's the choice in Vampire Diaries.
I want to ask you guys real quick, two more quick questions here. What happens to Michael and Star and Laddie after this? What do you guys think happens, whether it's in a sequel or just in general, Jennifer?
Well, at the end, they did transform, or the virus was cured, or whatever. They're back to normal. So, depending on how old Star and Laddie are in chronologically, not how old they look, but how long they have been around as familiars. I could see them kind of hanging out in the shared experience for a while, and then probably people drift away, normal.
Because now they're back to being normal humans.
They're now back to being humans. So they might stay in contact for a while because of the shared experience, the shared trauma, but eventually they will, find something else, move on, and eventually drift apart.
Kyle?
No, Laddie's new. Laddie's new.
Yeah.
He's on the milk carton.
Erin just stole my thunder.
Erin, what do you think happens to him then?
Well, I mean, as I said, Laddie's new because he's on the milk carton.
Yeah.
And I'd say that if looking at Star, she could be maybe 20, could be the same age as the mother because she's got that hippie look.
Yeah.
So she's gone for that. So she could be a 60s, So I don't think she'd be there. So they'll assimilate like a Borg a lot easier.
Kyle?
Again, Laddie was on the milk carton, so I think that establishes maybe he's with them for a little bit. What we don't know is, when they took him, did they kill his parents? What's going on there? So I think that's one of the stories
sorry, go on, go.
We don't know, but I do think they're together for a while, and then maybe go their separate ways. I think that's part of the interesting thing where we don't know too much of the backstory about Laddie and Star from this film, so we don't know, what the effects are from that. Like, we don't know how long Star was around. We don't know how long they can go on without feeding. I mean, that's one of the things that David even says, you have to feed. So how long have Star and Laddie been turned? Because they do indicate in there, they've got to feed to survive. So I think that makes it interesting, at least with Star.
But now they're human again. It wouldn't matter, right?
Right. Now they wouldn't. But during the time, because they hadn't fed to go completely, and especially in Star's case, because they make it established that she's at least been with them for a while. So, but you also never see Star turn into a vampire, if I'm remembering correct.
Yeah, it's true.
So she may have never been a vampire in the first place.
Erin, did you have a comment?
No, she says she still feels the same. She doesn't feel different when David gets killed. But I also think that Laddie might have been turned to keep Star because there is no girl, and that he's like a child. So that's why they turned a Laddie. So that's why they keep like with sort of in the Interview with the Vampire when they wanted to, basically Lestat wanted to keep Louis, he created Kirsten Dunst, whose name's totally
Claudia.
To keep the family, to make the family. And I reckon that's why because I don't think that they would have, I think that's the reason why, and I'm going right out on a origin limb here, that maybe why Max wanted to get Lucy because they started getting the girl in, the younger boy in. It was a family that was to keep it all together. They weren't just being
He wanted to bring two families together, just like the Brady Bunch. So
yes, in a sense,
to keep living and getting bigger. So I've got the biggest question of all time, guys. This has been bugging me. What the hell is with that weird hippie couple by the TV just hanging out there?
I thought that was the frog's parents.
But they're just like, are they on drugs this whole time? Just hanging out on TV?
Bad LSD trips.
I mean, they're not like, they almost look like corpses. They're barely moving. They could have been vampires or just maybe been bitten or something, but they're just not moving. So, well, guys, thank you so much. I want to get your final thoughts here. This has been a lot of fun talking about Lost Boys, and it was fun to rewatch this again. And the cultural impact that this movie had, and these young stars, and just the iconic look over the whole movie, the town of Santa Carla, aka Santa Cruz. Kyle, start with you.
I think Lost Boys, for a couple of reasons, is going to stay iconic. One, I think it really created a modern vampire, or a vampire of our era here. And I also think The Lost Boys is one of those movies that you can go back and it just so identifies with the decade it came out in. And I think it's one of those time capsule kind of films where, what are some of the things that were going on during this time frame? And you can go back and you can watch The Lost Boys and get that feeling. But like I said, I think The Lost Boys is really kind of one of those films that was brought back era of the vampire film. And really, since that came out, with everything we've had going forward, I don't think we have that without the Lost Boys.
Agreed. Jennifer, final thoughts.
So it's interesting watching this at 17 and watching this at 50, having more knowledge and more connections and stuff. One of the things that was interesting to me that popped into my head as I was listening to it was the naming of the protagonist and the antagonist. So Michael and David, which are biblical names. So Michael in the Bible leads God's armies against Satan, which is an interesting correlation for this movie. He's also seen as the healing angel. And so Michael being the one that destroys the vampire clan and healing Santa Carla is a very interesting play on words. David was the third king of Israel, and he was going to build a temple to God. And in his pleading to God to say that, God told him not to because he had shed too much blood. Which I think is another, when you see this at 17, you don't have the world knowledge and the connectivity and the experience and enough reading to make these connections. But, as at my age and watching it, I was just kind of going, okay, so the writers, to me, this is an intentional naming convention for these two characters because they're representative of those two ideals within the Bible. And I just thought, with what's going on now with the pandemic and the virus and, seeing vampirism as opposed to a bite on the neck and this is how you turn, you're infected with a virus. I think it's a very, very current and kind of really holds well up over time.
Well said. Well said. And thanks for dropping all of the science knowledge too. That was fascinating. Well done. Well played.
I'm the true nerd.
Yeah, you did your research. I love that.
Book nerd.
That's awesome. Erin, we shared some Santa Carla stories and got to go visit the filming location. It was a lot of fun, and it was awesome to revisit this film. What are your thoughts on The Lost Boys?
Yeah, I mean, again, the same with Jennifer. I've watched it over the years. Watching it at 17, totally different to watching it now. And again, that's just, experience and life. But also, I think watching, I don't know, even though it is steeped in the 80s, I don't feel like it's locked in it. I still feel it's current. And I don't know why.
There is a timeless aspect to it. You're right.
Does.
Yeah.
It does have a timeless aspect, even though you've got, the old phones and stuff like that, and you've got references to MTV and things. I think with the effects, there's not anything that looks really dated.
Tax guy.
What's that, Jennifer?
Tax guy looks really dated.
Tax guy? Yeah,
the tax guy.
Oh, no, but does he though? Does he? I think he's just that looks. Oh, I don't think he does.
Jen, we're much too close to the Thunderdome. He fits right in.
Yeah, we are actually. We're going to be wearing those, chaps sooner or later. But yeah, no, look, it was good to rewatch it. It was good to. It moved. It was paced well. Everyone's excellent. There's no, bad. There's no one sort of dropping the ball in any of the characters. And I think through time, in another, how many years, you could watch it again and still, enjoy it. There's nothing where you sit there and go, oh God, that was so 80s, even though it was. I feel like because it was the later part of 80s also. So stars, she's not, no one's looking really, Corey Haim's maybe weird fluoro outfits.
Yeah, his that long beige jacket, striped jacket he's got. Yeah,
this sort of Miami Vice look he was going for, but everybody else doesn't seem to be, because Lucy, and that was a nod to Bram Stoker's Dracula with the name, with calling the mother Lucy. Again, no one's really that dated. And even the sort of the people around, Star's not. So, and they're, even with the mullets, the guys aren't. They just look cool.
Yeah. It's interesting. Kiefer was saying that he feels that this movie keeps being discovered by new fans at different ages. He has a daughter and a stepdaughter that discovered it on their own. He did not introduce them to this film. And they're like, and he was approached by each one at different times, saying how cool this movie was and that can't believe that their dad was in it. And I think that is a test to how well this movie still stands and how important it is with fans and how we love talking about it. And, whether we bring up the mullet or we bring up Jamie Gertz and the wonderful cast, the fantastic soundtrack, the filming locations and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it makes it a perfect couch potato theater movie. And it was a lot of fun to revisit this. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us again. Always a blast.
For having me, guys.
You bet. Erin, as always, I think I'll be watching National Lampoon's Last Resort again, just in your honor. So there you go.
You only need to watch the first 5 minutes.
That's all.
I know what I'm searching out tonight.
Yeah, go. All you have to do is go and look for the trailer. And I'm in the trailer.
She is. She's in the trailer. She made it to the trailer of National Lampoon's Last Resort.
And I'm in a black bikini with a black hat, black glasses, but I'm in a strapless bikini. And I have to say, my boobs look good.
On that note, Kyle, thank you so much, as always.
I can't top what Erin just said, so I'm off to go see The Widow Johnson.
Thank you all for joining us here. I am blushing. Oh, my God. Okay. Thank you all for joining us here on the Fandom Podcast Network and Couch Potato Theater's special presentation of The Lost Boys. Until next time, we will see you on the couch. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.